And here to discuss how Catholics are faring this election season and their discernment on this consequential vote is Father Thomas Petri, president of the Dominican House of Studies. Father Petri, it's so great to have you here with us, especially because we really need prayer. People are really nervous. In the biggest Catholic moments this election season, it was the Holy Father who gave his opinion on the 2024 candidates on his way back to Rome from his tour in Southeast Asia. Here's what he said.
In genere si dice che non votare è brutto.
You have to vote, and one must choose the lesser of two evils. Who is the lesser of two evils? That lady or that gentleman? I don't know. Everyone with a conscience should think on this and do it.
Now, Pope Francis slammed both presidential candidates without naming names as, quote, anti-life. He continued his explanation saying both are anti-life, but the one who throws out migrants and the one who kills babies, both of them are against life. Father Petri, is the Holy Father equating immigration and abortion?
Well, he might be. It's hard to always divine the Holy Father's mind. You know, this language of choosing the lesser of evils. As a moral theologian, I would say we should never choose any evil, right? And so Joseph Ratzinger in 2004, when he wrote a response to the U.S. bishops, said that Catholics sometimes will have two bad choices or two choices that aren't that great in various ways. That Catholics can choose, say, a candidate who is in fact pro-abortion, but they must have proportionate reasons, and they can't choose that candidate because the candidate is pro-abortion. In other words, we're not choosing the lesser of evils. There has to be something good in the candidate we're voting for, and there has to be proportionate reasons to tolerate any of the evil policies that we may not agree with and actually disdain.
Well, you don't really have a Catholic running for office except for JD Vance, with President Biden out of the office now. JD Vance does identify as Catholic. Have you actually seen his Catholicism come through as he's been campaigning?
I think so. I think, there was a little nervousness just about the abortion language and whether or not a national abortion ban is appropriate and should be sought. But, after the Dobbs decision a couple of years ago, the pro-life movement and Catholics really have to have a civil and legitimate disagreement about how to move forward in eliminating abortion from our country. That might mean a national ban, if that's feasible, or it might mean going state to state. And it seems that J.D. Vance and President Trump have articulated their position that it's better to convert minds and hearts state to state on this issue.
Well, let's talk about some of the statistics and surveys about the so-called Catholic vote. Many Catholics who claim the faith don't attend Sunday Mass, and that means they're in a state of mortal sin. Knowing that, how are we supposed to think about this secular definition of Catholic that is used to report out results?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because so often we hear these statistics about Catholics voting in a certain way and being split in the vote, but this is true, that we don't have a lot of Catholics. We have a large number of Catholics who aren't going to Mass every Sunday, and therefore don't really speak with what we call in the Church the sensus fidelium. You have to be part of the Church and growing in faith, growing in prayer, growing in knowledge of what the Church teaches to really say that you have the sense of the faithful. And so when we do have these large blocks of Catholics who really aren't practicing Catholics, it's hard to say that they actually really do represent Catholic voters, even if they are identifying as Catholic.
Now, a different study by the Public Religion Research Institute and Catholics said that Catholics who attend weekly religious services are notably more Republican or more conservative. We saw this also with the Latino vote, where if they go to Mass, they're more conservative. Is that an indicator of formation, or what is that telling us?
Well, I do think it's an indicator that the two parties have moved in different directions. My grandparents, my parents were certainly solidly Democrat, working class Democrats in the 50s, well into the 60s. I think somewhere in the 70s or 80s, there was a different alignment on values and cultural values. So it shouldn't be surprising that Catholics who are very involved in the faith are moving in more conservative trends. I would simply caution, however, that we got to be careful. Neither party can really be called the Catholic Party, and that Christ is still the Lord and will be Lord when we all wake up tomorrow morning.
I heard someone say that it's important for Catholics to impose themselves on the political system and not to be owned by anyone, lest we become irrelevant.
That's great.
I found that very heartening. Well, thank you so much for being with us. We know that we're going to be relying on you for coverage and for analysis ongoing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.